With me on the panel, who used to work for Paddy Ashdown a long time ago, along with Toby Young, the journalist and author, and Ayesha Hazarika, who is a comedian and writer and various things, a columnist for Mr. Osborne over there on the Evening Standard, and once worked for Harriet Harman. We always like to think that campaigns don't change anything. Well, maybe we don't, but it's sort of become a bit of a modern nostrum that campaigns don't change anything. It's pretty hard to sustain the notion that, I mean, Miranda, maybe I can start with you. This feels like a campaign that changed a lot. True or not true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, you've discussed it already, but this idea of the arrogance of taking the electorate for granted, you know, the bloody difficult woman turned out to face a bloody difficult electorate. And actually, if the exit polls are right, it's a bloody difficult result to know what to make of as well, you know, because the people have spoken, but what have they said?
Is. We haven't got very far in 4 hours, but we've got at least another 24 hours. We'll make sense of it eventually.
It's true, but you know, that huge wobble during the manifestos week does seem to have done for the Tory campaign, and they didn't recover from it. And the sort of rather brilliant, it turns out, Labour strategy of not having such a clear line on Brexit that you would put off either Leavers or Remainers. But again, that leaves us in a difficult position, because what will the Labour Party's attitude now be to all of these things you've been discussing about potential Brexit compromises? Because Labour has pulled in votes from both groups, and it's hard to know what to make of that in terms of the strategy from here in.
Toby, I mean, essentially one of the problems when you call an election campaign is all the focus on you, because everyone's first question is, you know, I remember the day she did it, and, you know, I think we started News at 10 by saying, you know, it's good news. There's an election, just what we all wanted. And the truth is, everyone was a bit like, oh, an election, you know, really? And the trouble is that, you know, whatever your reasons, it's quite hard to get beyond the argument that it's basically all about you. Do you think it was something we underestimate, the idea that if you call an election, it almost always, that nobody wants, it almost invariably unravels?
Well, I think the public didn't seem to have much of an appetite for another electoral contest after one in 2015 and then the EU referendum. And that does suggest that the public's attitude now will be politicians go and sort it out, don't inflict another general election on us. I think one of the clear successes of the campaign was Labour's promise to scrap tuition fees from September. That has clearly brought out 18 to 24-year-olds, and they were always going to do well or better than expected if 18 to 24-year-olds came out to vote. And, you know, if you're 18 and you're about to go to university, that offer's worth £27,000 to you. So it's pretty hard to turn down. And that clearly they've effectively bought that section of the electorate, and they've come out for the party that's promised to save them a huge amount of money. Let's not forget 50% now of 18 to 24-year-olds head to university.
Makes you wonder if the Tories will have to, even if they do stay in power, have to do something for the student vote. Ayesha, I'm just, before we get to you, if I might, I'm just told that Angus Robertson, the SNP leader at Westminster, has lost his seat to the Tories in Scotland, which is quite a startling development. So this is it's not all going against the Tories, is it, here? But let's just go back, if I might, to the campaign itself. I mean, was it as bad, really, for Theresa May as everyone said? Or, you know, as I was saying to Toby, is there some reflection of the fact that when you call a campaign, everyone's out gunning for you?
So, when we started this campaign, Theresa May was about 20 points ahead of Jeremy Corbyn in the polls. It was all about leadership. Corbyn actually kicked off his campaign with a photo call in a toilet. I mean, the signs could not be worse for Labour. Yet it is Theresa May who has had a stinker of a campaign. The thing is, when you start off a campaign with a lot of hubris, saying it's about leadership, I am strong and stable, then you say your opponent is an absolute joke, then you're too scared to turn up and debate him, and then you go into a witness protection scheme in terms of the public and the media. I mean, it has been a disaster upon disaster, and it shows she has feet of clay, because at the start of the contest it was all, you know, she's been this very good Home Secretary, she's incredibly calm, she's, you know, very authoritative. And interesting, the manifesto, not only was it a very uninspiring manifesto, it wasn't properly costed, so they almost kind of moved away from their mantra of fiscal responsibility, and the catastrophic mishandling and misjudgment of the dementia tax really stung her badly. So look, the night is still young, we have to see how it sort of shakes down, but I suspect at the end of tonight, and when the figures come in, Jeremy Corbyn's leadership will look far more strong and stable than Theresa May's. OK, Miranda, just finally, can I come back to you on the whole... We haven't talked that much about what part the Lib Dems might or might not play in any future, but the way we're looking at it now, it doesn't look like anyone can form a government, probably, without the Lib Dems again. Now, I mean, you don't want to... I don't think Tim Farron's going to want to go into a coalition, but
Can you see the Liberal Democrats as a party kind of coming to an agreement with somebody, whether it's the Tories or Labour, to offer some kind of support?
Well, I think it's really hard to tell because it's so fluid on the numbers at the moment. Because, you know, with the margin of error in the exit poll, the Lib Dems could have a really quite OK night if they hit that 14, or it could be, you know, if it's less than 9, they've gone backwards. And in that situation, it's such a small rump that you're only probably of help to people on particular votes. I mean, I think the Lib Dems will take quite a tough line on Brexit. It would be very difficult for them to have any sort of agreement with a Conservative minority government if a Conservative minority government carried on with this very, very hard line on Brexit. How can you have a relationship with that? Because the Lib Dems are so pro-European. It's got to be about this single market issue now, as you were discussing.
Can I just make one comment on the discussion you've been having over there?
Yeah.
Which is everyone's assuming that if the British Parliament decides one way or another it wants to have a soft Brexit, it doesn't want to leave the single market, a Norway-style deal, something like that, that will be the will of the people, they'll go forward and they'll try and get that deal. Brussels have made it very clear that's not on the table. Well, it is happy with a hard Brexit. Okay. If it allowed Britain to stay in the European Economic Area, like Norway, it would be too much of an incentive for other countries to leave.
I think it's a little bit more complicated, because if we accepted freedom of movement, they might well accept us staying in the single market. So it's all a bit complicated. But speaking of Europe, this is a good moment to go and have a chat with Nigel Farage.